Bungie. What utter disgraceful leadership, especially where CEO Pete Parsons is concerned. Destiny 2 is easily one of the most successful live services, and in many ways it's sort of like the mother of looter shooter live services. And most recently, with the launch of the final shape, its peak concurrent players got to almost the same numbers as the all-time peak. And beyond that, the game has just been doing really well. Critically speaking, the final shape was very well received, sitting at an 89% generally favorable score from critics, and even from users, it's been received favorably. By all metrics, the final shape was a huge success, and by all metrics, the developers, the people who made the game, should be rewarded. But instead, we're seeing yet another round of layoffs. And this is despite the fact that Bungie leadership assured back in 2022, when it was acquired by PlayStation and Sony, that this would not result in layoffs or restructuring, except that's precisely what's happened. Back in 2023, there was mass layoffs at Bungie that left everyone shocked, especially because of past promises. And now we're seeing another round of that with this announcement from July 31st, 2024 from Bungie. Here we have a tweet that reads, "This morning we shared an important update with the Bungie team on the difficult decision to eliminate 220 roles at Bungie. You can read the full statement below." The individual who wrote the statement was none other than CEO Pete Parsons, and all the blame, rightfully so, is being shifted to his lackluster, abysmal, disgraceful leadership. And we already have former employees like Liana Rupert here calling for him to step down, and this is just one of many current and former employees, as well as community members, who are saying it's time for this guy to go. So here's the statement in question. This was published via a blog post titled "A New Path for Bungie," and Pete talks about how this is a period where they're making some of the most difficult changes they've ever had to make at the studio due to rising costs of development and industry shifts, as well as enduring economic conditions. Basically the same excuses we have seen from other companies laying off employees after getting overzealous with hiring, especially during the COVID period, when they saw a rising trend due to the fact that people were locked in, expecting that rising trend would stay, only for them to realize that this was just temporary because of the world conditions. It reads right here, "Beginning today, 220 of our roles will be eliminated, representing roughly 17% of our studio's workforce. It'll affect every level of the company," says Pete, "including most of our executive and senior leader roles." But the one person this doesn't affect? Pete Parsons, who is still somehow the CEO of Bungie despite his failures. He says we'll be offering generous exit package, including severance, bonus, and health coverage. And he says right here, "I realize all of this is hard news, especially following the success we have seen with the final shape. They made a really successful product, and when even that's not enough to be a shield for layoffs, for that to be enough for a company to be healthy, then there's just something fucked up about the structure and the system and the pipelines and, the financial plans surrounding a company that clearly chewed on more than they could swallow because of leadership that just had such a lack of foresight." It reads right here that after exhausting all other mitigation options, this has become a necessary decision to refocus our studio and our business with more realistic goals and viable financials. Realistic goals and viable financials. If only that were just something that major companies kept in mind, but instead they have this relentless pursuit for unsustainable infinite growth, and when that unsustainable goal is not attained, the ones who pay for it are the employees and not the leaders chasing this ridiculous trend. There's talk here of how on top of the layoffs, there's going to be integration with Sony Interactive Entertainment, working to integrate 155 of their roles, roughly 12% into SIE over the next few quarters. And they're also working with PlayStation Studios leadership to spin out one of their incubation projects, an action game set in a brand new science fantasy universe, to form a new studio within PlayStation Studios to continue its promising development. And then there's one big chunk here that talks about how we got here, trying to explain the situation, saying that for over 5 years, it has been our goal to ship games in 3 enduring global franchises. To realize that ambition, we set up several incubation projects, each seated with senior development leaders from our existing teams. We eventually realized that this model stretched our talent too thin, too quickly. It also forced our studio support structures to scale to a larger level than we could realistically support given our 2 primary products in development, Destiny and Marathon. In 2023, our rapid expansion ran headlong into a broad economic slowdown, a sharp downturn in the games industry, our quality miss with Destiny 2 Lightfall, and the need to give both the final shape and Marathon the time needed to ensure both projects deliver at the quality our players expect and deserve. We were overly ambitious, our financial safety margins were subsequently exceeded, and we began running in the red. Basically, poor planning, poor leadership, and foresight that was non-existent. Basically, a complete lack of what they're trying to discover now, realistic goals and viable financials. Pete Parsons says right here that we did everything we could to avoid today's outcome. And I want you to keep this in mind as I share the next bit of information about Pete Parsons that will really have your stomach churning amidst this situation. Saying here, even with the exhaustive efforts undertaken across our leadership and product teams to resolve our financial challenges, these steps were simply not enough. As a result, today we must say goodbye to incredible talent, colleagues, and friends. Want to know something real funny about Pete Parsons? The kind of money that this guy is making, the kinds of expenditures that people have discovered him make personally, that just makes the laying off of Bungie employees that much more disgusting. People discovered that over the time period following Sony acquisition, Bungie CEO Pete Parsons spent over $2.3 million buying classic cars. This was uncovered the same day he made a statement saying they laid off 220 employees because the company has been dealing with financial challenges. If there is anything that highlights the disparity between executive pay, especially the captain who is failing the ship, who is leading the ship astray into an iceberg, versus the developers who are doing successful work, it's this right here. This guy buys classic cars like one would buy magic cards for a commander deck. So this is something that has been covered by numerous outlets, but the one who uncovered this was Twitter user Tailored here, who's actually someone who works on Valorant, and it is stated right here, Bungie lays off 17% of its workforce. Oh, and unrelated, here's a list of cars the CEO has purchased on BAT. And going to the website, you can see right here that this is in fact Pete Parsons' account, and you can see right here all of the auction wins that we have seen throughout the past few months and years, and you can see the kind of money that Pete Parsons is spending on these cars. The latest being this 1961 Chevrolet Corvette 283 4-speed. He spent $91,500 on this on June 1st, 2024. Over $60,000 on this car. Over $33,000 on this one. $201,000 on this Porsche. $79,000 on this. And you can show more here, and the list just goes on and on. When you can be so comfortable with spending money haphazardly like this, you know you are like disgusting rich and you have like fuck you money. And by the way, this is something that the CEO would flaunt at times in front of employees. So Liana Rupert here, this is a tweet published on July 31st, 2024 after the layoffs was reported, talked about how there was one point during her time at the company at Bungie where Pete Parsons walked right up to us and bragged about a few new expensive cars he bought and that we should come to his house and see them. And then Liana hints that there's just so much about Pete Parsons that we don't know about that she's been trying to uncover and dig through, and I get the sense that sooner or later Pete Parsons will get what's coming to him, stating here, then I started digging and I have not stopped digging since October. There's so much more to this that won't come out for a few more years to protect people, but I just want to say this falls squarely on leadership. There's this one meme that has been spreading that is pretty much the summary of the state of the games industry right now. This Parks and Rec meme, but instead of go to jail, it's you're fired. Worked on a mediocre game? You're fired. Worked on a critically acclaimed game? Believe it or not, also fired. I mean, yeah. Just recently, Xbox and Microsoft decided to shut down Tango Gameworks despite producing one of the most critically acclaimed and financially successful enough game of that year. And so nobody's safe anymore. It's just like it's such an unstable industry with employers treating developers like garbage, like they're just tools to be disposed of and not, creative powerhouses to be nurtured and just to be treated humanely because your employers taking care of human beings who are depending on you for them to live their lives while also doing work that creatively fulfills them. And if you go to this IGN article right here, you have tons and tons of former or current employees or just developers in general speaking out about the situation, people who got laid off, and just expressing how inexcusable this is, industry-leading talent being lost yet again, accountability falling upon the workers who have pushed the needle to deliver for our community time and time again. Please maintain focus on those who have lost their position and income. Offer help where you can. And people talking about how their entire team is gone. The player support team was also gutted, as well as some of the folk behind the most beloved narrative moments and sounds. The player support team worked harder than anyone else through weekends, holidays, and the pay was atrocious, only to be tossed aside like garbage. Leadership has to be changed. Like, this is the big call we're seeing. Everyone saying clearly Pete Parsons is not right to lead this company. Clearly there's just something really messed up about what's going on behind the scenes if they can lay off 17% of the workforce, and meanwhile Pete Parsons is bragging about the millions of dollars worth of cars that he bought and bragging people to come over to his house so he can flaunt that shit while employees and staff members are suffering. Griffin Bennett here says Pete is a joke. Step down, Pete, so on and so forth. You get the idea. That's the general vibe surrounding Bungie. And just to keep you up to date on what layoffs look like now in 2024, we're only a little over halfway through 2024. And already there's an estimated total of over 11,400 employees in the games industry who have been laid off. We have already surpassed the entirety of 2023, which was 10,500. I get the sense that we're nowhere close to done this year. I get the sense that this number by December 31st, 2024 is going to look freaking ridiculous and just, it's going to be gut-wrenching. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Except Bungie needs new leadership now. Pete Parsons needs to go, and he deserves all of the backlash coming to him right now and none of the respect. When so many developers are speaking out and saying that when there are trials and tribulations at Bungie, they can be sourced to Pete Parsons and his awful leadership, I mean, yeah, there's got to be validity to that, and I expect that a lot of developers will be speaking out. I expect that folks like Jason Schreier will be looking into this. But at the very least, that's one man's take based on what we know so far. I'll be sure to keep you guys updated as this situation develops. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on this recent round of layoffs surrounding Bungie and the reports surrounding Pete Parsons and his leadership and what people are saying about this disgrace of a CEO. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.